2 years ago, I had no idea my life would be as different as it is today. Knowing that I was about to enter my 12th year teaching, I did not know it was going to be my last. I also didn't know that a year later, I would be leaving Houston, where I was born and raised, and moving across the country. I also wouldn't have even believed you if you'd told me I'd be married, because I never wanted to be married until I did. But that summer, before my last year teaching, brought several significant turning points that changed my life forever. And in this video, I'll tell you what drove me to leave teaching and what drove me to leave Texas, what I did over the course of that final year teaching to prepare to switch careers and to be in a completely new home, how I did end up getting married after all, and how life has been going since, which is not at all how I planned. Welcome, I'm Autumn Beckman, and I'm here to help you live your most luxurious life within your budget. I post new videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss those. And you'll be able to see my community posts, which I do daily, where I share sales and, of course, fabulous handbags. My channel is usually about handbags. Luxury living on a budget is kind of my motto. But today's video is a little different, and I'll probably get a few new viewers who don't usually watch my kind of content. So to my regular viewers and anyone new who's interested, I want to let you know that on my website, autumnbeckman.com, it'll be linked below, and give you a heads up that I've started listing a few handbags for sale. So if you want to get a head start before I officially announce it in another video, go check it out when you're done watching this. Quite a few of you have been asking lately for a life update video, and I was planning to do one year after I left teaching, so that's what this video is. But I didn't want to just tell you about what's been going on in the last few months since I last did a vlog. I wanted to go a little deeper and a little bit farther back to talk about my motivations for these major life decisions and what these past 2 years have really been like. So I'll present this video in chronological order, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a sense of what I've been going through. I won't go into my detailed long list of reasons why I ultimately left teaching. As you know, there's been a mass exodus of teachers over the last few years, and there are lots of videos about that. My reasons are no different from theirs. But I will tell you a few key points that really changed things for me, because before this first one that I'll tell you about, I hadn't even considered leaving teaching. I was very happy where I was. I was teaching photography and digital arts at one of the best middle schools in Houston. It was a pretty fabulous job and I enjoyed it. But the first turning point happened the very last day of school, that second to last year teaching. So this would have been June of 2022. On that last day, I was called into a meeting with an administrator who was my appraiser. And with teacher appraisals, your appraiser comes in and observes you teaching, they make notes. They go through this checklist where you get scored on different things, and you're required to have a meeting about it. So I was called in for that meeting. Everything went fine like it always did. But I was also told on the last day of school that administration's plan for the following year for my position, which I had been at that school for 9 years at that point, I had always taught the same thing, photography and digital arts. I was told that they would be replacing half of my classes with a study lab. There was no conversation about it. There weren't reasons given for that decision. I was just told that this was happening. And the reason they needed these study lab classes, post-COVID, kids all over the country are behind where they should be. But the photography teacher is not the right person for that. See if there are any academic teachers who are interested in doing it. If not, hire someone else. And the school where I was had a lot of resources. They could have done that. Now keep in mind, I'm a certified fine art teacher. That means I went to school for 4 years to get an undergraduate degree, and then I did another 1.5 years to get a teaching certificate, specifically to be a fine arts teacher. I also taught digital art, which was a mandated part of the state curriculum for visual arts. We had 2 other art teachers at that school, but they did more traditional art mediums. They didn't do the technology part. I was not trained nor certified as an academic teacher, and that's because I didn't want to be. That's not what I went to school for. That's not what I applied for the job for. So as you can imagine, I was neither pleased with this news nor with the way that they did it. No conversation, very last day of school, we are changing your job whether you like it or not. I was also told that I'd be doing mandatory summer training without being asked about my availability. I already had 4 trips planned that summer. We were going to be out of town the entire summer pretty much. So that was a big turning point. And I left that room with a knot in my stomach, and it literally did not go away the entire summer, even on the vacations, until I returned to school in the fall and found out, oh, that's not happening after all, but we never bothered to tell you. So I did at least get to teach photography and digital arts for my final year, thank goodness. I also taught yearbook, by the way, which could be a full-time job in itself. Meanwhile, during that summer, with this big knot in my stomach, we took 4 trips. The first was the fateful trip to Oregon. We flew into Portland, we drove to Lincoln City and went south all the way to the border, even into California to see some of the redwoods. We spent, I think it was about a week and a half, and on our way back, I was practically in tears on that last day because I had never seen anything like the landscape here. It was just so incredible, and I just had this feeling that I didn't want to leave because I belonged here. This is where I'm supposed to be. And you get that feeling sometimes on vacation, like, oh, I wish I lived here. This was different. This was like, this is where I need to be. And it was that summer, because of that trip, that we decided to move here. After that, we also went to visit a friend in Florida. And then I went on a trip with another friend to Colorado. And then the friend from Florida came to visit us, and we took them to a few of our favorite places outside of Houston. Now, besides that incident that happened on that last day of school, the last year of teaching turned out to be my most difficult year teaching. And ultimately, when I look back, it's kind of good that that incident happened, because by the time I went back to school in the fall, I knew that it would be my last year, and that helped me get through a lot of things. Again, I won't go through every little thing that happened, but the main issue that made this year so difficult were technology problems. As someone who taught digital arts, the technology, the equipment that we have is critical for me to do my job and for the students to do their jobs, which is to learn and practice the digital arts. When I started this photography job, it had only been a full-time position for 1 year prior to me starting. There were a handful of cameras, they were all point and shoots, and many of them were broken. I built the photography and digital arts program into one where every student had their own DSLR, one of those big cameras, and they learned how to use those. They learned the manual controls. My classroom was a computer lab, and when I started, there was no real photography editing software, so I acquired Photoshop for all the computers. I also did most of the maintenance and tech support on the computers, unless it was something beyond what I knew and I needed to call tech support in. But this very last year, we were required, and this was a decision at the district level, to stop using the desktop computers that we'd been using because they were no longer supported, and we had to use these little small laptops called Chromebooks, which are not like real computers. They're very, very, very limited in what they can do. For example, I was not able to install software like Photoshop, and we relied very heavily on Photoshop because that's the industry standard. That's what I was teaching the kids so that they would have an advantage. Photoshop is useful for so many things. So the whole year, we had all kinds of technology problems because these computers wouldn't do what we needed to do for my class, including for yearbook. So it was incredibly stressful for that reason, and many, many others. So I was working that full-time job, dealing with those issues, also teaching yearbook, which is stressful, and of course being a full-time YouTuber, doing 3 videos a week. And it wasn't just the most difficult year of teaching that I've ever had, it was one of the most difficult years of my life. I came home so stressed out almost every day that it was having a physical effect on my health. I often dreaded going back to school, and I also had the added stress and pressure of knowing that I was about to transition to a completely different career and move across the country. I was fully intending to work for someone else, but what was I going to do? And that was stressful and intimidating because how do you do something different? Do I have to go back to school? Well, one of the things that I learned going through higher education and acquiring the handful of degrees that I have and teaching, not just in public schools, but also at the college level, is that we're so fortunate to have the internet these days because you can learn anything on your own. Any information you want is at your fingertips. And I feel strongly, and this is coming from a person who is well educated and an educator, that college in many respects has become outdated. And that may be a controversial thing to say. And I don't mean that nobody needs to go to college. Certainly there are jobs where you do have to. And so many job listings say that they require a college degree. The problem, of course, is that most people don't end up working in the field they have their degree in. So why is that even helpful when you end up learning on the job or from other life experiences anyway? But I also discovered that there's all kinds of online learning you can do right now where you can get certificates for things, and it's so much cheaper than going to school. For example, there's a website called Coursera, and at the time that I found this and I was taking some classes there, it was only $40 a month for unlimited access to whatever courses they offered. You do it at your own pace and then you get a certificate at the end. So I started, but never finished, several courses that were created by Google, and several of these required building a portfolio and finding clients to work with, and given everything I was doing that year, I didn't have time for that. But I did learn a lot. I learned that there are businesses now, since there are so many teachers that have left, teachers have made businesses teaching other teachers what to do next. Some of the careers I looked into and learned a lot about are instructional design. That is, for example, when you do those online trainings that are required by your company. Like for teaching, one of them we had to do was for bullying, to recognize that and learn what to do. Instructional designers are the ones who design those. I looked into being an accessibility specialist. As a teacher, you work with students with all kinds of differing abilities, and I'm always drawn to helping professions, so that seemed like a natural extension. I looked into digital and social media marketing, which of course is an extension of YouTube. Probably my favorite of all of these was UX design, which I had never heard of before. It's user experience design, and these people design websites and apps. And the way I explain it to people is basically you're designing these things to be as user-friendly as possible. And that looked like an amazing field, and that's something I'd love to do, but I'll tell you why I didn't pursue that in a minute. I also looked into data analysis, because I'm really good with that kind of thing, and project management, which sounds like it might be, not to dismiss anybody who does project management, but it sounded like it might be one of the easiest jobs to transition into because it's very broad. Of course, you can get much more niche about it, but there are also a lot of opportunities in that field. But I was most drawn to the jobs that were creative and in tech because they were really interesting, they're cutting edge, so I'd always be learning, I'd always be challenged. And so many of them were work from home, which I certainly prefer. I'd never had a chance to do that as a teacher. We were back in the building teaching students in October of 2020. And those tech jobs, they tend to pay really well. I also looked at government jobs, which I'd never really looked at before. I mean, teaching is technically a government job in a public school. But I found quite a few that were really interesting and that also paid well. And I also looked into administrative work in healthcare. So while I'm doing all of this and teaching and doing YouTube, I also know that I'm about to move across the country. So I have a whole lot of research to do about where we want to live because we hadn't decided that yet. Like what city even, what part of the state. So that Thanksgiving, we did a second trip to Oregon, and we actually flew into Seattle this time because we weren't even sure if we wanted to live in Oregon or Washington. So we flew to Seattle and we drove over to the coast, and we saw the coast from there down to Lincoln City, which was the part of the coast we hadn't seen yet. And because I'm the great planner and researcher, I'm the one who did all the planning for that trip too. And then when we got back from that trip, now it's December, so Vlogmas, which means I'm working every day, but I'm also filming and editing every day. And that month, Paul's brother had a pretty massive stroke that changed his life forever. He survived it, but not without impairments, both mental and physical, to the point that he's had to be in a care facility ever since. And that was a turning point for Paul and I because we had never really seriously talked about marriage because I never wanted to get married. He'd been married before and didn't want to do it again. But when this happened, it was like a wake-up call. It's like, hey, life can change for either one of us at any time, and especially since we are about to move across the country and it's just going to be the two of us there. We don't have family and friends there. We need to be legally bound. So if something does happen to one of us, we are the other's person legally. We can make the decisions, we can visit, we can do whatever we need to do without question. So besides, of course, loving each other, that was the reason that we decided to get married, and we did it very last minute, like 2 weeks later, we were married. I have a video on that if you'd like to see. I'll link it in the comments below. So now it's the new year, it's the spring. A few months after this, we are moving to Oregon, and I don't have a job yet. So the spring semester, in addition to everything else, was also spent applying to a handful of very select jobs. But before I could do that, I had to learn all the new tips and tricks and rules and subtleties and things you can do to try to give yourself an advantage when you are writing your resume and your cover letter and submitting those to companies. And let me tell you, if you have not done that in a while, I hadn't done it in 12 years, it is an entirely different world now. It is so different and so much more complicated and frustrating and time consuming. It is a full-time job unto itself. I watched so many YouTube videos, I subscribed to so many newsletters to learn about how to apply to jobs and give myself whatever advantage I could have. And as all of this was going on, I had started hearing a few months prior and was still hearing, and I'm still continuing to hear today, all these stories, one after the other on the news about companies laying off massive amounts of people. At this time, that spring, it was a lot of tech companies mainly that were in the news. So the exact field that I wanted to go into, many of the same jobs I was looking at, all these people are being let go. So suddenly, not only are there fewer jobs available, but the ones that are available, there's a massive pool of very talented, very experienced people who I would be competing with. And I mean, come on, realistically, I can't compete with that. But I still applied to a handful of jobs, didn't get any of them. What I was hearing from a lot of people who would talk about trying to get a job when you're moving to a different state is that it's highly unlikely to happen, that you really need to be living there first. So that was very discouraging. And of course, while all this is going on, I'm still doing a lot of research into Oregon and cities and neighborhoods. We'd narrowed it down to the Portland area at this point. So now what neighborhood do we want to look in? And then in those neighborhoods, what apartment buildings meet all of our criteria. I cannot express to you enough how stressful this year was. But finally, the school year came to an end at least. So that was a massive weight off my shoulders, a big relief. I could now focus exclusively on Oregon and on our new life. So that June, a year ago, we took another trip up to Oregon to look in person at apartment buildings and neighborhoods. And that is when we found the apartment that we're in now. And when we got back home to Houston, we spent the next few weeks mostly packing and purging. Oh my gosh, we got rid of so much stuff, including most of our furniture. And we were planning for the move. Paul took care of that. He found a company that arranged all the movers, and it was complicated. We drove his car up, but mine had to be shipped. And we also took some time out to say goodbye to people that we had been around our whole lives. And I had to pre-film a bunch of videos before we left so that I would have content to put up while we were on our road trip and the first few weeks of moving in, because we were going to be a little busy. So we arrived in Oregon on August 1st of last year, 2023. We spent most of August and September moving in and getting settled. We had some things we had to buy. I did a video about that, some of the research I had to do to put this room together. My mom came to visit to see where we lived. I have that vlog up too, I can link below. And I finally started to get back to work. At this point, we had decided that I would take through the end of that year, and then we pushed it to like March, to just focus on YouTube, because there were so many things that I'd wanted to do for years on my channel and related to my channel that I had just never had time to do. So we thought, let me sort of take a break, not work 2 jobs, but just the one, and do these things, see what comes of them, and also take time to explore our new home. So I got back into the habit of using my planners and organizing, making plans, laying out timelines, learning. I watched so many videos on self-employment on YouTube. I created and launched the My Handbag Collection organizer, including the item trackers front and back, where you can keep track of all the information about your handbags and small goods. And that turned out to be more successful than I was ever expecting it to be. Thank you. I also created a new website. I'd been with Weebly before, my website host, and I'd been unhappy with them for a while because they just didn't have all the features that I needed. So I did a lot of research and I finally settled on Squarespace, transferred my domain there, which takes some time, and then started building a new website, which takes some time, especially when you are learning a new program. And that's where I have the handbag organizer pages listed, autumnbeckman.com, but Squarespace is going going to allow me to do so many things that I haven't even had time to tap into yet. But so much is coming. Make sure you subscribe so you can see and be one of the first to know. I also designed our holiday card. I had used to do those every year, but I hadn't done one since 2019 because with COVID, I had been too busy with school and everything. It was a hectic few years for sure. And in doing the holiday card last year, I did it digitally for the first time, so I learned Procreate, more new software, and we did a lot of traveling, exploring Oregon, and enjoying our new home. Because bloody hell, we worked really hard to get here. And last fall and continuing into this year, I was feeling really overwhelmed, really unsure if I should really be focusing all this time on YouTube and not looking for another job, something with a more steady income. Because on one hand, I have always wanted to work for myself, but on the other hand, I've never had any models of that in my life. I've never really had models of anyone who's very successful or mildly successful. If you know anything about my background, and a lot of you do. And I'd never taken business classes, so I didn't have any kind of formal business training. So I really have just been figuring this out on my own, which maybe takes longer than it would if you'd had people in your life to teach you things. So that's been kind of frustrating too, because starting over, and with YouTube, I'm not really starting over because I've been doing it for 7 years at this point, but leaving that steady career that I had with teaching and going into something that's much more unknown, much more volatile, it's frightening, and I definitely did not know if I was making the right decision, and that is stressful. And particularly since I talked about this in a recent video about luxury channels, we've been seeing a downturn in views for the last at least a year, and that equates to earning less. So what I do when I'm feeling that way is, okay, I've got a problem, I'm feeling badly, I'm feeling unsure, what can I do about that? What can I do to make my problem go away or make it better, make myself feel better? And for me, in this case, that is learning. That's often the answer. So last year and even more this year, I've been doing business webinars. I researched and found some books on business and have been reading those. I'll share with you my favorite business book in case you're interested as a beginner. It's The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. It's very easy to read. It's really interesting. It is dense, packed with a lot of information. And something I found really interesting about it is that in the foreword, he talks about how you don't have to go to business school to learn about business and do it well. Very interesting read. I also subscribed to the Harvard Business Review thanks to a recommendation by Dale of Dale's Addiction. Thank you, Dale. Lots of great information in there too, and it's up to date. And I've still been learning about design and many of the careers that I was interested in before. I'm still learning things connected to those too. I have these 4 big poster boards on my wall that each one is a quarter of the year, and each one has calendars for the 3 months, and I have color-coded sticky notes with deadlines and steps I need to do to get to those deadlines. And early this year, I was still feeling like I should be applying to other jobs. But I was having this mental battle between the pros and cons of working for myself and the pros and cons of working for someone else. And I came to realize, I was talking about my background a minute ago, I came to realize that one of the things that I was taught growing up, because I didn't have any models of leaders, I was taught that to be successful, to be a productive human being who's contributing to your own livelihood, if not also to society, that you have a job working for someone else. That's what you're supposed to do. Working for yourself was never a viable option, and it was seen more like goofing off, I guess, or being a slacker or not working instead of actually pursuing your dreams, your passions. And it also took me a while to realize that when you do start your own business, you're working for yourself, that you're not going to see instant success. It does take time to grow a business. But I still feel like I battle that less so with myself now, but more with some other people in my family and with some people in society, because being a YouTuber, I mean, I'm doing more than that, but being a YouTuber for many people is not seen as a real job. I see that kind of comment in social media all the time. Not directed at me so much, but just in general. And sometimes I have asked people, how do you define a real job? No one ever answers that. So anyway, it has been a journey to get to where I am now, and I'm still very much in the middle of it, but there were all kinds of mental and emotional battles that I was not expecting, having to do with the validity of working for yourself. And ultimately, Paul and I have decided through many, many conversations that that is all I'm going to do right now. That doesn't mean I'll never work for someone else again. It doesn't mean I won't start looking for another job within the next few months. I have no idea. Probably not. But it just means that for now, I'm still working for myself and seeing how things go and trying new things, experimenting and learning. Now, part of that is because this is what I want to be doing, but part of that is also the freedom that comes with it. And I say that and then I sort of, what freedom? Because when you work for yourself, you're responsible for everything. So it's a lot of work. It's longer hours. I'm working just as much now as I was when I was teaching and doing YouTube. I work 7 days a week. I get up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I start working immediately. I'm filming this right now at 6 o'clock in the evening. I've spent all day today photographing and cataloging handbags for sale, as well as working on some video notes. So these kinds of hours are pretty typical for me. And I haven't taken much time off lately. The Thursday series I'm doing right now on Coach, as much as I really love it, I'm really enjoying it, and I love learning so much about Coach, and I love research, so it's just a lot of fun for me. It's also a lot more time consuming than I thought it would be. And that's because I want to get things right and I want to be thorough, but it hasn't left much time for other things. It's also maybe not the very best business decision because I know that content is a niche within a niche within a niche, so those videos aren't going to have the highest views, which means they won't bring in as much money. But I saw that information was missing from luxury YouTube, and I knew that I could provide it and that I would enjoy it, so that's why I'm doing it. But getting back to the point about the freedom that working for yourself allows, if I get sick, which I haven't, I can take time off. If something happens to Paul and I need to take care of him, or he goes out of town and I need to take care of the animals and be home with them, I can. If we decide on a Tuesday that we want to go to a winery or to the coast or somewhere else, we can, except that I'm probably working, but we can. We have the option. We are both very aware that even though Paul is in exceptional health, he's quite a bit older than I am, and we've moved to this place that we want to explore, and a lot of that exploration requires climbing things. So me working for myself and having flexibility allows us to take off whatever time of year we want, whatever day of the week we want, to go enjoy this place that we worked so hard to be in. Whereas when I was teaching, if we wanted to travel to see the fall color, which we never got in Houston, I couldn't. It's very hard to take time off as a teacher. And I will say another thing that is probably controversial, but I realized sometime this past winter, I realized that the teaching profession and my experience in it left me traumatized. And I don't use that word lightly. For a long time, when I thought of going to work for someone else again, it made me feel sick because there were so many ways that I and other teachers and students were treated badly. And I'll talk particularly about teachers, but just being overworked, expectations of how much you can get done in the time you're given are not realistic. The pressures on you from all different directions, and all you want to do is do your best. And I know I can do really well, but there are so many restrictions and limitations. And then I'm not somebody who asks for help. So if I do ask for help, I really need it. And when you do, you're often chastised, or you're told to ask for help. Hey, we're here to help you, but then you do and there's no help. Anyway, I feel like I'm finally over that, but it took a long time, and it was interesting to come to that realization. Like, oh, that is why I've been feeling this way about working for someone else. And I'm sure that's not specific to teaching. There are so many jobs where employees are not treated well and are treated disrespectfully. Like when my appraiser called me in that very last day of school with no conversation to tell me my job would be changing. The way that was done was so disrespectful. But another reason that I'm not going to work for someone else right now is that these layoffs are still happening. I'm in Facebook groups for a lot of those careers that I was interested in transitioning into, and every day people are saying how difficult it is, how they've put in hundreds if not thousands of resumes over a year or 2 years, and they are experienced people, qualified people, and they are still not getting jobs. It's just really, really, really tough out there right now. And if you were looking for a job, I wish you the very best because, oh my gosh. And I'm so fortunate that I have this YouTube channel. I had that to fall back to and to start from now to build something more with it. I do feel like I haven't done nearly enough. Like a year ago, if you'd said, okay, you're going to have a year to work on your business, what do you think you'll be able to accomplish in that time? I thought it would have been a whole lot more than what I've done. I'm finding that things take longer than I think they will. But also we had a huge disruption in January. Some of you may remember we had this massive winter storm that hit this area. We had ice storms and snow and all kinds of things. In our building, we didn't have water for 12 days. We had electricity sporadically. It got down to about 39 degrees in the apartment. And ever since then, or a little bit after then, it was late January, we became aware of something that we're going to be part of, but a lot of other people have a part to play in this before we can do our part. And we were told in January that this big thing would be happening in February. And then in February we were told, now it's going to be March. And ever since then it's been pushed 1 month after the other. Well, we got a phone call the other day saying that it now looks like August. So fingers crossed that August, maybe September, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to do our part. And once we do, I will be able to share this with you. I know I've mentioned this in a couple of videos. I've been really cryptic about it. But because of this limbo that we've been in with this thing, there's been a lot that I've wanted to do but haven't been able to do. Like I wanted to have a vlog sale back in November, but then I had other things going on. I didn't have time. It takes a lot of time to organize a vlog sale because I list everything on my website. So I do pictures and listings and all that. And then I was going to do it in like February and this stuff happened. So let's say, for example, that I'll put up the vlog sale or I will launch a new product. And then all of a sudden this thing is happening. Well, when this thing happens, I have to stop everything else I'm doing and only focus on the other thing for several weeks, maybe a month or two. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to take. So I don't want to like launch a new product and then a couple days later say, oops, I have to stop that, I'll be back in a month or two. So we've been in this limbo where I haven't been able to do anything because we haven't had a reliable timeline. So that has been very frustrating. And I feel again like I'm way behind because of this. I also in February had that trip to Texas where my nephew got adopted. But meanwhile, while we were in this state of limbo, I have been working on a lot of things. I just haven't been able to tell you about them yet. So just know that there is a lot coming. And I'm so excited about the really big thing. So excited. We got some really good news about it the other day. Very much looking forward to sharing that with you when the time comes. So that is what I've been up to these last 2 years. It's been a lot. And if you had told me 2 years ago that I would not be teaching anymore, that I would be working for myself with my YouTube channel and building a business around that, and that we'd be living in Oregon, which I had never been to before, and that Paul and I would be married, I would have thought you were crazy. But that's how life has turned out. And I tell you what, we could not be happier. We love it here so much. It's beautiful. I know when we first moved, I was doing some vlogs and I couldn't shut up about how beautiful it was and mountains and trees and everything. We still feel the same way. We're a little more used to seeing those things now, but we still go outside and see the views and are just awestruck. It is gorgeous here. The dogs and Vincent love it too. Vincent hasn't been able to get out much in her backpack. I got that so we'd be able to take her on hikes and stuff, but it's been too cold. She's a bird, if you don't know who that is. And then Roxy and Baron, the 2 dogs, they love it. Baron loves it because he has a heated blanket and he gets to just stay under the blanket all day. But they both love going on hikes too. Roxy absolutely loves the beach. It's her favorite place ever. She goes wild when she's on the beach. Baron is cold a lot, but he has a lot of sweaters and jackets to help keep him warm, and he has a lot of fun. He's happy as long as he's with us. And Paul and I are doing very well. Paul just switched. He's been using Windows computers forever, and he just switched within the last month to Apple. I've been on Apple computers forever. I've also used Windows. I know how to do those too, but Apple is my personal preference. So I'm helping him with that as much as I can. If you know what Bluebell is, Bluebell ice cream. Paul had a birthday recently. I took him on a dinner cruise on the Willamette River. That was a lot of fun. We got to see a bunch of things that we didn't know existed along the river. But I also ordered some Bluebell and had it shipped up for him. So that's a nice little literal taste of home, or old home, because this is certainly home now. What else has been going on? We've been settling in well. I just don't leave the house much. I'm in this room all the time unless I'm sleeping, pretty much. When I leave, it's usually to the grocery store. Every once in a while, we do a day trip to a winery or a hike somewhere. But it's hard for me to get away. Even though I know that I need a break, I need to get out and do things, I always feel a little guilty that I'm not home working on something because I always have 20 things that I'm supposed to be doing. But that's how life is going. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to answer what I can. And thank you so much for watching, especially those of you who have made it this far. I appreciate it. Hope to see you back here next time, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.